Okay, so we're about to dive into one of the most incredible survival stories you will ever hear. And believe it or not, the whole thing kicks off with a single, just mind boggling number 10,000 feet. I mean, just picture that. That's almost 2 miles straight down. Just let that number hang there for a second. Because that is the height from which a 17-year-old girl fell out of a plane that was literally disintegrating around her, and she survived. The question, the one that's just impossible to ignore, is how? How in the world is that even possible? Well, that's what we're here to figure out. So let's go back. The date is Christmas Eve, 1971. We're on a holiday flight that, well, looking back, it seems like it was doomed from the very start. This was LANSA Flight 508, just a quick hop over the Andes Mountains in Peru. You know the vibe. It was festive. Everyone's excited, heading home for Christmas. And on that flight was a 17-year-old named Julianne Kopke, flying with her mom. But, as it turns out, choosing this flight, that was a decision that would change everything. And here's where the story gets some really heavy, dramatic irony. Julianne's own father had told them, whatever you do, don't fly with LANSA. I mean, the airline's reputation was just terrible. Locals had a dark joke that its name stood for LANSA lands on its belly. And to make matters worse, the plane they were on? A Lockheed Electra, a plane designed for flying in the desert, not over mountains. Its wings were rigid, completely wrong for the kind of turbulence you get over the Andes. So this wasn't just a case of bad luck. This was a disaster waiting to happen. And yeah, about half an hour after takeoff, that disaster struck. And it struck with all the force of Mother Nature. For some reason, instead of flying around a huge thunderstorm, the pilots decided to fly right through it. For 20 minutes, it was absolute chaos inside that plane, just being tossed around. Then, at 21,000 feet, lightning hits the right wing. It catches fire, snaps off, and then, at 10,000 feet, the whole plane just starts coming apart in midair. And for Julianne, who's still strapped into her seat, her entire world just changes in a heartbeat. The sound of the engines, the screams, it all goes silent. All that's left is this incredible, deafening rush of wind as she's falling, totally alone, into this endless green abyss. She passed out during the fall, and when she finally wakes up, it's Christmas morning. She's lying on the floor of the Amazon rainforest. Her nightmare was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. So, this brings us right back to that huge question. How does anyone survive a 2-mile fall? Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was this perfect storm, this chain of events that are all basically miracles. Okay, so get this. Her survival came down to a wild combination of things. First, the thunderstorm itself actually helped. These massive updrafts slowed her down like a kind of natural parachute. Second, the row of seats she was strapped to started spinning, which created this auto-rotation effect, kind of like a maple seed or a helicopter blade, adding even more drag. And then, the final piece of the puzzle, she landed in a super dense part of the rainforest. The thick canopy of trees and vines acted like a giant net, cushioning her final impact. Just incredible. But, survived is a pretty loose term here. I mean, yeah, she was alive, but she was badly hurt. We're talking a broken collarbone, a concussion, deep cuts all over, and one of her eyes was swollen completely shut. She'd also lost her glasses, so she could barely see. The miracle of the fall was over. Now, the real fight for her life was about to start. For the next 11 days, luck wasn't going to be enough. She was going to need everything she had. Her knowledge, her courage, and one specific piece of advice her father had given her. And this is what made Julianne different. See, her parents were zoologists. They actually ran a research station right there in the Amazon. So for her, the jungle wasn't some scary alien place. It was her backyard, her classroom. She wasn't just some tourist. And that one piece of advice from her dad, it became her North Star, her entire game plan for getting out of there alive. Man, her journey was just this brutal up and down. She finds a little stream and starts following it, with her only food being a small bag of candy she found. Then on day 4, she comes across this awful sight. Other passengers who didn't make it. As horrible as it was, it meant she could stop looking for her mom. A few days later, her hope just shoots up when she finds a big river, but then it's crushed when a rescue plane flies right over her and doesn't see her. And things get really bad. By day 9, one of her wounds is infested with maggots. But then on day 10, she sees it. A boat. The very first sign of another human being in more than a week. That boat, that discovery, was the beginning of the end of her ordeal. And it led to what is maybe the most intense part of her whole story. She followed a little path from the boat and found a small hut. It was empty, but inside she found a can of gasoline. Now, for you or me, that would be totally useless. But for Julianne, remembering things her parents had taught her about jungle remedies, that gasoline was medicine. Which brings us to another number in this story. A pretty gnarly one, actually. 30. That's how many maggots she pulled out of her own arm. She poured the gasoline directly into the wound. Can you even imagine the pain? To force them out one by one. The level of grit that takes is just unbelievable. So when the loggers who used the hut finally came back, they didn't see a teenage girl. They saw something terrifying. This pale figure covered in mud and blood, one eye swollen shut. They were genuinely scared. They thought she was a Yakwamama, a kind of water spirit from their local folklore. It wasn't until she spoke to them in Spanish that they understood she was human. Her rescue was, of course, a miracle. But the true story, the full weight of what she accomplished, wouldn't really sink in until later. There's one last number in this story, and it's a really tough one. 14. Investigators figured out later that at least 14 other people actually survived the crash. They were alive, on the jungle floor, but they were too injured to move. And they waited for a rescue that just didn't get there in time. And this fact right here, it just drives home the point. Julianne's survival wasn't only about luck during the fall. It was her knowledge, her will to keep moving that made all the difference. You'd think an experience like that would break a person, but for her, it forged a purpose. Julianne did exactly what her parents did. She became a renowned zoologist. She even took over their research station, Pangawana, and has spent her life's work protecting the very rainforest that almost took everything from her. For years after, she was haunted by what happened, and she wrestled with that one big question that so many survivors face. Why me? Why was I the one who got to walk out of that jungle? And maybe, in the end, the answer isn't about the physics of the fall or the luck of landing in the right spot. Maybe the real answer is found in those 11 days on the ground. It's in the incredible courage, the knowledge, and that sheer unbreakable will to live that she found deep inside herself.